My name's Nicholas Romeril, and the film you're just about to see is about the trip I took in January 2018 as artist in residence for the Friends of the Scott Polar Research Institute. I was commissioned by the Scott Polar Research Institute to travel down to the Antarctic and to make art. They didn't give me any brief. The only stipulation is that I need to give one piece of artwork to the Friends of the Scott Polar Research Institute and the other sponsors, who are the Royal Navy and Bonhams. And then that was it. So it was actually fantastic because, it's so loose that you can basically do anything. Before I went, I kind of thought about what I wanted to create, and obviously I'm a painter, so the majority of the work is going to be painting. Whilst I was there, I kept sketchbooks, made little sort of study paintings, shot film, shot photographs, kept a diary, recorded the route, the trip itself. So it was actually a really busy, full-on day every day. And it was quite interesting working in that environment because the ship is moving, and so you have to work very, very quickly. You can't really think about what you're making. You just have to sort of react directly to what you're looking at, to what you're producing. And so the sketchbooks, there's lots of paintings which are very sort of loose and fluid, simply because that's the only way to work, basically. I used a lot of sort of felt tips, actually. I found worked really well, some watercolour felt tips and inks. I'd start 6 or 7 paintings, and then although it wasn't freezing very often, I'd have to leave them dry. Since we were moving, I'd have to work on one, and then the landscape would have gone past, so I'd have to put that aside and work on another one. I realised, to be honest, it's very difficult knowing exactly what you're going to achieve before you get on the ship. The intention was going to try and make some finished paintings. And then I suddenly realised, or after 2 or 3 days, I realised that that's going to be impossible. I had the option of seeing lots of stuff or just trying to concentrate on a couple of things, and I just thought, I've got to try and see everything. But it's not like the Blue Planet. So when you see the films of Blue Planet, occasionally it is, but quite often, especially in the peninsula, it was often quite grey, sort of low-level cloud, so the landscape is not permanently in high definition. And then probably 10 days out of the 23 or 24 I was there, we had good sunlight. And so that's when everything sort of gets magnified and the bright whites and the bright blues come out. And the thing about icebergs, they almost look like they're from Disney World. They kind of have this unreal colour and texture. And you just think, yeah, that's what an iceberg. You don't expect it to see it floating in the middle of the southern seas, so it was amazing. The world is actually flatter at the poles, and so you can actually see further. It was just phenomenal. The scale of things is kind of deceiving because, for example, one time we're travelling down this channel, and I asked one of the crew, I said, how far is this landscape from us? And he goes, guess. And I said, 500 metres. So he actually measured it, and it was 2.5 miles. And you just thought, that's bizarre. So the scale of things, that's the hardest thing I've found, is trying to get the sort of scale suggested in the paintings so far. So the fact that this ship was a Pacific icebreaker, so it's geared to go and break the ice, whereas if you were to go down there on a tourist ship, you wouldn't be allowed to go anywhere near the ice. To show how engaged the crew became in the projects I was doing, they lent me a rib. So obviously it had someone driving it. I wasn't allowed to drive it on my own. And they lent me this rib so I could get really close to some of the floating icebergs, and so we managed to get up really close to some of these icebergs, and that was just amazing, because they're actually really dangerous. They can just turn without warning, and I did see that once. I wasn't on a rib, but I did see it, and it's quite bizarre. You just thought, it was like there was a wave coming in from nowhere, and then all of a sudden you just saw the shape of this iceberg suddenly morph into a completely different shape, and you're just like, wow. I think that was probably the highlight of the trip, actually. And then obviously the Antarctic was just incredible landscape, just the scale of it and the colour of it, and just the magnificence of these icebergs and these glaciers and the mountains. It's just, hopefully I'll portray it better in the paintings and I can talk about it basically. So.